Bill Henshaw here again, Constitutional Crisis Channel. Another kind of current events topic here, and a red hot one in California, which I call rent control, a better solution. Now, I've just recently had occasion to draft a letter for a friend of mine who was recently compelled to sign a lease agreement. And I looked at this thing, all 35 sections of it, and I blanched and I said, my God. So I wrote a letter on her behalf, but without naming any particulars, and I said, wait a minute, to the CEO back in Chicago, you've got a problem here. Because we both know, the CEO and I, we both know that what you have here is at least a contract of adhesion, one where one side has all the power and the other side has none. And in fact, she was basically told at the time she signed this agreement, you can't make any changes or anything to it. It's take it or leave it. It's exactly what the bastard said. So it's a contract of adhesion. I think more to the point, it may be a bill of attainder, the taking of property without judicial process. And I fired off a letter to the CEO and I said, if you want to take me on here, you're going to have some real problems because, you're in a make-believe pretend world where we have a free market economy based on supply and demand. We both know that's wrong. What I want you to tell me is where you get your property rights to your real estate, given the fact that in this system, we as quote-unquote taxpayers, the government said, I swear to God, they have said a taxpayer, quote-unquote, has a zero interest in his time and labor, not to mention his life. So I said to the CEO, where exactly is it that you get any property rights to your real estate over and above your fat wallets to pay for all these budgets that you put in here in the elections that we have? I'd love to see it. Even if I get an answer, it's probably not, that question probably won't be answered. But I'm hoping to stop them in their tracks because the leverage we have here, and I told them flat out in this letter, if I beat you here, and I told them I'm 20-0 against attorneys, if I beat you here, this will be good for every apartment unit you have, and I will go out of my way to notify as many of your renters as possible, and we'll do the same thing, get a class action against you, and put you out of business for violation of your corporate charter. That's what you do, not civil rights. Their corporate charter says they've been created for the benefit of the public, not the damn banksters on 120 Broadway, New York, New York. That's how it always seems to work, doesn't it? I think this is a much better effort at rent control than what I've seen going around here, especially in California. Now, this won't happen overnight either, but with these kind of issues, we're going to have enough leverage that we maybe can get them to make changes in their contract to make it much more agreeable the way it should have been to start with, and we get rents that we can live with, at least at the outset. So any of you in that area that want to send me emails about that, I'll provide more information. It's a really, like I say, hot topic in California particularly, and things have to change. It's just not the way it should be. This is kind of a follow-up to the one I did on rent control, and the subject matter is loosely, free market or a collectivist government, and they're mutually exclusive. A lot of people now criticizing capitalism for having failed, and yet capitalism really has seldom, if ever, been given a real shot at it here, especially in the last 100 years. So what we have is controlled by centralized government that does not recognize the states, does not recognize our republican form of government, does not recognize members of the sovereign body politic of the nation and republic, aka beneficiaries of the trust known as the United States, but does recognize artificial corporate entities, and it thinks that they have rights, quote unquote. I can't see how that's possible, but you don't have to go back any further than the ratification, quote unquote, of the non-existent 14th War Amendment, the net effect of which was to reverse the relationship of we the people to government from principal and agent to guardian and ward, or if you want to be more crude about it, master and slave. That's what they think. And now all these decisions about all the American people are made basically from Washington, D.C., and the states, quote unquote, are pretty much ordered what to do or not to do, as the case may be. That's not the federated republican form of government that was ordained and established by the Constitution, and to benefit, guess who? We the people. and secure the rights, blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. We're so far away from that you can't stand it. But this is how it's happened, and I'm pretty sure it was planned, and maybe as far back as Alexander Hamilton, before the ratification of the Constitution, and other bankster thugs like that, going back to Mayor Amschel Rothschild in 1694 with the Bank of England. You can go back that far and maybe further. But that said, you either have one or the other, and we've had nothing resembling a free market economy in the last probably 100 years, if not a little bit more than that. At one time there was, and when we had it, we made the most progress in the least amount of time that any nation ever has. We've been here, 225 years? In less than half that time, we basically took over the leadership of the world with the free market economy. But that's when things started to change in earnest, back with the Spanish-American War in 1898, which should never have happened since it was turned out that the battleship Maine imploded. Spain did not sink it. And I personally think that the members of the McKinley administration knew that at the time. Hard to prove, but it certainly came out later when they studied the Maine much more closely, when we had the technology to do it. And then World War I. And if you don't know, the main motivation for America to get involved in that war was good old Eastern States Standard Oil, John D. Rockefeller, who did not want competition with his oil business coming from either the Russian Caucasus republics or the Middle East. And that was the agenda, to put them out of business or put them under control of Eastern States Standard Oil, which in effect was done. And to do that, by the way, when they started out, they thought what they had to do was take out the Tsar of Russia, the King of England, and there was a third party here I'll think of in a minute, but there's three of them that were related, first cousins, and if you see pictures of them in their military uniforms, you can't tell a difference. So Kaiser Wilhelm in Germany was the third. Well, it turned out all we really had to take out was one, Tsar Nicholas II, and they did it. And they got rid of him, and they silenced the King of England, and of course they beat Germany in World War I as well, and Kaiser Wilhelm was out, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire also ended very conveniently for the New York banksters. So a little history you probably didn't get when you were in 10th grade civics. But that said, all this comes together, and now we have the Federal Reserve put in place, as I mentioned in earlier tapes, and the issuance of paper money controlled by the Wall Street banksters and the Federal Reserve, and that's anything but a free market economy. And in fact, it's just the opposite, where the need is to maintain us on a war economy to make that paper money appear to be viable. That's one of the things I want to end more than anything else. In fact, that's one of the three most important. If we get these three, we get the Reconstruction Act, and the Supreme Court's already ruled that unconstitutional, but they weren't allowed to announce that opinion, a subject matter for a separate day. The 14th War Amendment, which my research analysis and now my record proved wasn't ratified, and the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, which I have a hell of an argument against that ever having been enacted. We get those three things, we're on the road to recovery here, and putting those bastards out of business and putting us back in control of our government. And that I hope you want as much as I do. That's what's been driving me for decades here, and I haven't taken my foot off the gas pedal. Hopefully I can help you to do the same. Thank you.